You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 352, The Mandalorian, Chapter 13, The Jedi. Well, it is finally here, the live-action debut of Ahsoka Tano. And if you've not seen it, we're going to really spoil a lot of things for you tonight. So hopefully by now, we're recording this on Sunday night. So by now, you should have seen it. But we've got a lot to discuss. Not only did we get Ahsoka Tano, but we got some pretty significant revelations around the baby, including his name, which has been a long-kept secret for us. And Jonesy's out this week. He's on holiday, having a good time, eating turkey. He's probably gained about 15 pounds at this point. So I reached out to a really good friend of mine. Please welcome to the show, Andrew Matranga. Andrew is, well, tell us about yourself, man. How are you doing tonight?
I'm terrific, Albert. Thank you. And thank you to everybody out there already chiming in. My name is Andrew Matranga, and I am a college professor and brand journalist. So I wear a couple hats. Tonight I'm wearing my Millennium Falcon hat because we're talking Star Wars. And so I teach at the University of Denver. So I'm a journalism professor, and I focus primarily on digital journalism, graphic design, web design, etc. But a couple years back, I decided to create a Star Wars class called Studying Star Wars. The University of Denver is a unique place in that we are on quarters, and in between those quarters, we have a program called special programs. That's what they're called. And they're short bursts of a week or two classes. And I came up with a class back in 2015 called Cannabis Journalism to report all about America's new normal with legalization in here in Colorado. So I was familiar with the folkways of how you could pitch an interterm class. And a couple years back, I think 4 years ago now, I was like, I want to teach a Star Wars class. You know, Force Awakens had just come out. Right. Who doesn't? But in any event, I pitched the Studying Star Wars class, and I think we're moving into our fourth iteration. I'll be teaching it in a couple weeks online. But it is a very special class. It takes 1 week. It's basically 9 to 5. And the hashtag is Studying Star Wars, and I've been trending obviously quite a lot on looking at current topics around whatever's happening right now. Obviously it's Mando, and of course a lot of Disney news with the parks. But in any event, I pitched this class and it's been amazing, right? When I get to teach it that 1 week a year, usually in December, leading up to The Last Jedi was very special. I believe that would have been the first iteration. 17, 18, 19. Oh. That was very special. Yeah. And then 18 was fun because we kind of got the liminal period between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. And then last year, of course, I taught it right before Rise of Skywalker, and right before I gave a talk at an event called Ignite Boulder, which is a short public speaking. They're 5-minute talks, and I did my Studying Star Wars talk that the day before I went to go see it. So last year was a very special edition. Really enjoyed it. This year we'll be doing it online, and I'm very excited because I got some cool people I'm dialing in, including the person who wrote our textbook. His name is Chris Taylor, and he has a great book called How Star Wars Conquered the Universe, and that's the main textbook for the class, and it's super fun. Dives deep into making, of course, the original trilogy. I mean, the making of the first Star Wars movie is probably the most important little time period in movie history, obviously for me as a fan. But then, of course, to start the understanding of George Lucas as a filmmaker, and I spend that whole first day of class talking THX, American Graffiti, and we watch those two films together. Right. We start with the Lucas canon, we do THX, and then we do Graffiti, and then the second day, like they're like, so you mean to tell me on the first day of class we're not even going to watch any Star Wars? I'm like, no, we're not actually. Right. And so then the second day, I actually have a copy of the VHS up there on my shelf of a mid-90s adulterated version of Star Wars. And so we watched that VHS. It's like popping. It was the one that I used to watch in my parents' basement, right, as a kid. So nice. They're very they're always very interested to see how George Lucas got his start. And I think that that's a great entry point. And of course, it fast forward however many years now, 45 years since he started really shooting and doing scouting since the mid 70s for that project. And it's very interesting. And every year I learn more. And of course, the evolution of the storylines and the business around Star Wars are pretty fascinating. Yeah. Chris, thank you for welcoming me to the show. I appreciate you. So thank you for that. I see Chris in the comments there.
Yeah,
hope that kind of answered your question, Albert, about what studying Star Wars is all about. It's a 4-credit class at the University of Denver that's a week long, and I get students from all across campus. They're not journalism students, so that's kind of the coolest part for me. Have a good night, Katya. But I was going to say, it's a pretty cool way to go about teaching.
It sounds good, man.
Media, like it's a media class, but we go through Star Wars. So that's the long and the short about studying Star Wars. I pinch myself pretty much every day knowing that I get to teach a class like that.
That is so cool. I mean, and you got to think, like, I would imagine you've got at least 30 minutes blocked off to explain how the VCR works, and this is a VHS tape, and
I could barely get it to work last time, just like because of like the tape and like the studio that we were in. Like we moved room anyway. Like it wasn't my normal teaching room, and I was just like, "What is happening?" Like how and they're like, "What even is it?" I'm like, "Literally, you got to blow on it, dudes." And I was like,
yeah,
like we got to blow on this thing just to get it to work, and it thankfully did. It was really.
Got to adjust the tracking, do the whole 9 yards there. No, that's great, man. I'm glad to hear that too. And it sounds like you're teaching them how to crawl before they walk and run, right? By starting with THX 1138 and American Graffiti. So great stuff in there.
And then they do a blog every day, and then they do a long paper at the end on one topic. So like the economics students are like, I want to study like credits and the Galactic Empire and trading. I'm like, go for it, whatever, or like the females are like, I want to study female representation in media. I'm like, do it. Like, that's fantastic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, cool, man. Let's do this. Let's get into, we're going to talk about, obviously the Jedi, the episode here, but
yes,
before we do, we'd be remiss by not at least mentioning that as of, I guess this morning, I was up at 1 a.m. Central Time when Twitter was just blowing up after we found out, I guess, that David Prowse has passed away at age 85. And it was kind of I've had a chance to watch, we're not going to break down I Am Your Father. There's a documentary out there that came out in 2015, and there's been a lot of, I don't even know, man. There's been a lot of drama, I guess, over the years between Prowse and Disney and Star Wars, and we're not going to get into all that. I'll just say that he was a very kind, gentle person. Everybody that I've ever known that actually met him and saw him gave him, he gave you the time of day to do autographs and all of that. But what was your experience with? Did you ever get a chance to meet him? And I didn't, by the way. I never did.
No, I didn't. But I mean, he's still the man behind the mask, right? I mean, it might not be the voice, but his stature, his presence was, the iconic villain of movie history. You know, I mean, his entrance song, I don't know, you got to give it up to David Prowse. And what was I going to say? It's very interesting that we have Ahsoka, the Padawan, actualizing so many things, and there's the passing of like the Vader. I don't know. I thought there was like a interesting ships in the night kind of like, I don't know. This obviously was probably not going through his head, but it was going through mine. I was like, it's kind of special to have the lineage continue here, so to speak, with Ahsoka entering the show, and so you always find parallels, right, with Star Wars and real life.
There's tons to be found. Yeah, absolutely. So, so our best wishes to Prowse's family and everybody there, and certainly may the force be with you, sir. It was great. I mean, he was, like you said, the mannerisms alone, the posture, and
I mean, picking the guy up on Tantive 4, right, in the first real scene where you see him do something just totally raw, right? It's just so
they picked him for a reason.
That's physical presence alone.
All right. Well, let's get into the episode. We're going to break down the Jedi, and I'm going to start let's get, if I could get your overall thoughts on this episode as a whole. Like, what were your kind of just, as I know you've had a chance to watch it a couple of times, but what did you think, at least out of that first initial reaction after seeing it?
Yeah, I mean, I was pleased, I guess is what I was going to say.
Satisfied?
Well, this season, I guess the whole show is like just constantly questing the Mando, right? I mean, he finds a child. He learns all those things. He has that conversation with the armorer, and she tasks him with that at the end of the last season. And this season has been a lot of hopscotching, right? I was looking forward to, like, the first episode was amazing, right? I was like, I could live in that episode forever. I loved that episode, right? That was really fun. But this specific one, it was like from the word go, right? It was on, right? It wasn't a lot of the first episode where we're just waiting for them to kill the beast. You know what I mean? Like the constant, like this was like from the first scene, she's running through the forest, slicing people up. And I was a little surprised. I happen to normally watch these things like on my phone at like 1 a.m. or 5 a.m. on Friday. So I have headphones on and I'm watching it on a small screen. I usually watch it again with my son and his friend. They kind of do like a live stream and I can take in the sound design a little better, you know, and all of the little things that are all around the screen that are harder on a phone to see, especially when you're like in bed in the middle of the night. But the visual nature of this, it took so many great elements from other pieces of the universe and that one planet, that one village, you know, the castle sort of setting, the sort of feudal medieval nature of the castle walls and all that, you know, I really grooved on it. But maybe that's because I love those David Macaulay, like old, how you make castles and drawbridges, and it just felt like really evocative of kind of that part of the Star Wars reference points where it's not just Westerns, where it's not just the Kurosawa samurai. It felt also like that kind of like King Arthur-y, like, you know,
with the castle
they
wall.
they got the gate closed, you know, they're up on the ramparts. I thought that there was a nice way to do it. Sometimes it's not always like high tech, you know what I mean? That part of it, I liked that it wasn't like it felt more natural, right? I mean, there's still evaporators around and there's technology everywhere in Star Wars, but it felt like the most like same thing with the first episode where it's like just a village of people, right? And they're living, they're doing their thing.
Yeah, these everyday people that you wouldn't expect. You know, they're out there. We know they're out there, but we're getting to see their story, which is something we don't normally get to see in Star Wars. So.
Right.
I think
I grooved on that. I just grooved on the whole set, like the whole set as a set piece. It was cool. And
so for me, I think this episode, I will say this. I wasn't the biggest, I'm not gonna say I wasn't the biggest fan of it because that doesn't sound fair. I actually really enjoyed the episode. I thought what Dave Filoni did with his writing was great. I mean, we're coming from the source here in terms of Ahsoka, so we knew going into this episode it was going to be in a big episode. We were going to get some big tidbits of information, some background, some context, some things, even some answers, which we did. But I think, you know, in terms of his directing, I feel like he did better than he did in season 1. So I would say that's an improvement. There was one thing, there was something about it, and I still haven't put my finger on it. There was something about this episode that seemed just like a half a step behind. I don't know if it was the pacing, and I get what he was doing. He was going for like a Yojimbo kind of a look. I mean, definitely there was echoes and shades of Kurosawa throughout all of this, and the pacing wasn't as, I mean, there was moments when it was on and it was spot on. There was moments when he pulled back a little bit and just kind of let you absorb what was happening in the moment and the characters and the set design, like you mentioned. I get all of that, but there was just something about it that felt like a half a step behind for me, for at least for most of it. And I don't want to sway anybody's opinion because I know I woke up and everybody was roaring, raving about this episode and for right reasons. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff in this, but it wasn't my favorite episode of the season. I still think that's the last one, actually, believe it or not. The Siege, I thought
the Siege was good.
What he did with that one was great stuff. But yeah, so and then technically the sound effects again were just killing it. I mean, every time she pulled out her lightsabers, my goodness, you could hear it.
It's so deep. I watched that opening scene this afternoon just to kind of brush up again because I was interested in just her posture, and you know, Ahsoka has some moves as a Jedi that are very unique to her, right? And so like whether it's her flips or like just when she's in the air, like it's really tough to nail that in live action, and I felt like that came across relatively well. Right?
And I thought Rosario Dawson did a pretty bang up job as Ahsoka as well. I mean, we won't even get into the looks and all that's already been explained on Twitch or Twitter. I'm sorry. They explained that they had reduced the size of her Luku because she needed to be able to move around and visually wasn't going to look as good and all that and get in the way. So that's already been explained. I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. I think I did initially, but now that there's a reason, I'm like, okay, fine, we'll move on.
Yeah, and those are the nitpicky things that we as fans kind of like can really dig into and hold on to. I do really like about how I see some folks in the comments talking about like I was surprised that it was just like, whoa, she's right first scene. She's the protagonist here,
oh yeah,
right?
Pull the Band-Aid right off.
Yeah, that was what someone said. I like that little line. And so in any event, yeah, like I thought her posture and all that, you know, it's tough to get used to the voice at first, but at the same time, like I'm a grown up. Like she's an actor. It's a movie or a show of a
It's a
movie.
show,
You know,
right,
like
yeah.
like
Right.
it's I'm able to be like, this is Ahsoka Tano in the show, and that's it was pretty good. I'd have to
Yes.
say, and I guess it wasn't my favorite episode of the season either. I really did like the first one. I don't know. Maybe I do like Tatooine so much. It's just
Yeah.
it's just so Star Wars to me. But I also just kind of it was I remember reading the Aftermath and not really the Aftermath trilogy, not understanding like the Cobb Vanth character, and I really liked how they brought him into it and brought the Boba gear and all that stuff. And I'm not even a huge Boba Fett fan, and you know,
Oh yeah. It was
personally, but it worked really well. But as far as you know, the visuals were really nice. The sound design was pretty fantastic. I'm a huge fan of the score. I really listen to them all the time on Spotify on all the playlists, and
yeah.
I had to go back and listen to some stuff, especially like, you know, with the Baby Yoda scenes and just the music there and hearing Yoda's music. You know,
Yeah. Yoda's theme
for
when
me,
that came up. Yep.
and we can get to that when we do like the sort of chronological, but there was a lot, like you said, with the reveals, you know, that were surprising to me, right?
Yeah.
I between the name and the baby's story and all that stuff. Well, we can get to that, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's one of these things where it's like, and Dave Filoni, he did this all through Clone Wars. He did this all through Rebels, right? He gives you answers, but it just leads to an infinite number of questions beyond that, right? So you don't really ever, it feels like we got answers, but now I've got even more questions than I had before. And that's kind of what you want, right? You want that from a ongoing series type TV show like this, right? I don't want to be a one and done or give me the final answers and it doesn't go anywhere. These things are all paths and they lead and sprawl and spread out in a lot of different ways here. So we'll come to that here in a second. Let's get into the actual beginning, and we've already kind of touched on this first, but I mean, I really liked a lot of what we were seeing. I mean, we get to hear the blades before we actually see them. I love what they did with her jumping in and out of the fog. It was I almost, you know, we've talked a lot about on this show about this being kind of a parallel of like or homage to samurai movies and westerns and stuff, but this one felt like more of a ninja movie, right? I'm gonna charter like these 80s ninja movies where you can't see them, and that's really cool. I mean, it's very scary, right? It's scary. You're knowing that there's something out there that's just disappearing. I love the fact that she was turning her lightsabers off and then turning them back on so she wouldn't give away her position.
So dark, yeah. So dark. That scene was so immersive with the fog, and someone made a comment on the stream there too. Like, I was at first I was like, oh man, like who is this, right? Because they're shooting at something, but then you get to that, the POV shifts to like her, and she comes through the shot, and it was just, I don't know. Yeah, it was quite a reveal. It was pretty special.
Good stuff.
I'm looking forward.
They took care of her coming into this series, and I think it was a great debut for Ahsoka Tano, which, you know, is going to lead to other things down the road, whether it be in the Mandalorian or a spinoff series or whatever that's going to look like at some point. I do want to touch on one thing, and I sent you the picture. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. This is there was a Ralph McQuarrie painting that they had done a long time ago. He did it. It was supposed to be like the opening of Jabba's palace, and it's very infamous now. If you're a Ralph McQuarrie fan, a Star Wars fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This sat in the archives for a number of years. They dug it out when The Force Awakens came out. It became Nema Outpost, at least some variation of Nema Outpost. And now in this one, we got to see it up on the top. So around that castle wall at the very top, that arch is there, which is what has the gong underneath, which really all that to say is, yet again, Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau are going back to the archives and pulling even more and more of the Ralph McQuarrie stuff that we've not seen, only in text, you know, books and picture books and that sort of thing, and really repurposing that, which I think is amazing. I just love the fact that no one's ever gone in Star Wars, and no artwork is ever, you know, not going to be used in Star Wars. At some point, it does get used in some way, and I just really love that painting. So,
no, yeah, me too. And I'm a total geek for the McQuarrie stuff, and we spent a whole day of the class talking illustration and orchestration, where we do music and we do art, because those are the two things that, you know, without those two elements, Star Wars doesn't really like pop.
Yeah,
right. Without John Williams or Ralph McQuarrie. So I do love how deep it is. I'm actually, you know, there's that, you know, we saw the spiders, for instance, in Rebels a little bit, but then we brought them back, right? Which was pretty cool in that episode, which was not the best, but it was kind of cool to have those spiders. Those are creepy things. And seeing them in like the live setting was just different than when you see them in Rebels, right? But I have to say, it is very cool the way they're using all of the palette, right, of what's possible so far.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things too, just quickly about with Ahsoka Tano, there was a really great move that she did where she, attacked a person, or she attacked a person, cut the tree, right, and then that piece of the tree she ends up using telekinesis to make that fly and hit somebody else.
That's cool.
And then that shot ends with this tree falling over, right? And if you follow like samurai games, samurai TV shows, anime of any sort, this whole thing of trees getting cut in half and falling down, right? Banana trees being cut. I mean, they used to practice the sharpness of the blade on trees and do that kind of thing. And so, I mean, it's just straight out of there. The other thing too that comes to mind when I see that scene was just the charred wasteland. And we come to find out later on that Morgan was kind of behind all of this, but it had shades of like Mustafar in The Rise of Skywalker. I know they're not the same planets, and that's not what I'm saying at all, but it was just interesting to see that they had used that kind of a setting. I think it worked really well for her, as much as I thought it worked really well for Kylo Ren in The Rise of Skywalker, just visually, right? Very, very different, and this was more of a black and white contrast. You had the white of Ahsoka against this really bleak, dark, burnt, scorched earth kind of background. And we talked about her jumping in and out of the shadows and all that stuff. So again, I can't go on enough about how wonderful I thought the intro was for her and how she was introduced to us as a live action hero. That was just a great job from Dave Filoni there.
For sure.
Let's get into the Razor Crest at this point, because we're going to skip over. We'll come back and talk about the HK-87 droids, because I'm a big SWTOR fan. Anybody that watches the show, listens to the show, knows that's true. But we'll come back to that here in a little bit, and we'll talk about the other characters as well that are introduced. But we get into the Razor Crest, and we get it's like another parent-child moment, right? He's sitting there telling him, he blatantly told the kid what not to do, and he still didn't listen. It's like, and if you're a parent, you know exactly where this has happened to you at least twice, if not 3 times today alone. But I thought that was good. And we had more than the knob shenanigans with him wanting the knob. And this all plays a pretty significant role here a little bit later. But how are you liking this aspect of The Mandalorian, this parent-father or parent-child relationship that they haven't been hinting at it? I mean, it's been kind of right in your face and on the nose.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, for me, but I'm a parent, right? And I have 2 little kids who love Baby Yoda. We have the Baby Yoda doll. I mean, it's been an entry point for my youngest and even my daughter, and I mean, I work, my other job I mentioned, I'm a brand journalist. I work at a company called Sticker Giant, and like the amount of like stickers we get, this is Boba Baby Yoda, right? Baby Yoda drinking boba tea. So it's been good for business too, right? Baby Yoda, I mean, he's up there in like the top 5 most secretive reveals in Star Wars sort of lore, right? I mean, this show dropped and there was no talk about a Baby Yoda, and then as soon as we meet Baby Yoda, that's all this show became about, right?
Phenomenon.
So I even have a piece of art, the Clan of Two. It's this old medieval thing. Anyway, I love the whole Clan of Two thing. I love the whole, wolf, lone wolf and
cub,
the cub. So there's, I think, a lot to dig into there. And I saw one of the folks on my Star Wars Twitter, it's like, that like the Mandalorian's going to break our heart real soon, right? I mean, there has to par with Baby Yoda, something. I mean, there's just sort of, I don't know what the resolution is for them, right? Like, and I think that's what keeps us coming back all the time. We never want him to lose the child or something to happen to the child, because that would be human nature, right? We want to protect the child, right? So,
well, I've got a whole story on what's going to happen here that I'll share with you guys here in a little bit. No, I'm kidding. I do, but no, we don't have time for that.
Right on.
All right, so so they land there. Mandalorian lands there on Corvus. He decides he's going to head into town, try to get some information on what's going on. And he gets and this is where it did feel a lot like Yojimbo. If you've never seen the Kurosawa film Yojimbo, this is like almost scene for scene, shot for shot. He's coming in, there's people running away. They're obviously scared of him. They don't want to, talk to him. And there's very good reason, right? You get the sense that there's a lot going on in this town. I mean, they're torturing people. They're living in fear. So something really bad is happening. Mando kind of picks up on that immediately. The magistrate then sends her guards. They take him out to go meet with her. And right when those gates open, when he goes to meet the magistrate, again, that shot, and I include the picture in the show notes so that you can see it here. And I meant to pull it up for our listeners and viewers, but it's just that it's her, I guess the magistrate's, I'm going to call it her palace or her hideout or whatever. That looks like, again, more Jabba Palace, like Ralph McQuarrie artwork that he did there. So it was a great setting, and it really does play. I mean, there's a whole, like, Asian a culture kind of aesthetic that's going on throughout all of this episode for a lot of purposeful reasons. But I really enjoyed this set a lot. Like this was perfect, especially when you couple that with the samurai showdown fight between Ahsoka and Magistrate Morgan a little bit later.
That was fantastic. And when I saw, you got some great comments here, but what I saw when I saw that building too, and all the buildings, it reminded me of like the early drawings for Kashyyyk, which was like this like mountainous water planet with like these sort of teepee style things. But then also all of that kind of architecture with the round buildings is very much like the stuff you see at Galaxy's Edge too, on Batuu and Tatooine, of course. So it's cool motif for all these outposts, like just the round circular, like even Lothal had that, big bulbous thing. I think like the circular design aesthetic of McQuarrie is very much coming through on this. And again, like this is the first 5 minutes or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm back in Batuu, and then you enter the garden and there's that transition between, village and royal, the magistrate or whatever.
Yeah. Very different on the inside than what's going on the outside.
Yeah. All tranquil. And she's feeding the thing and Baby Yoda like peeks out. I'm like, what's she feeding in the water? So it's so funny. But yeah, she's got the Beskar staff, right? That's what sort of sends them. It's always like it's not always, but in this case, I mean, that's the sort of weapon in this one specifically, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've the jetpack, and now he's got this thing. So
yeah, I mean, he's picking up little pieces here and there. I mean, this is a continuation of what we saw in the first season, right? He got new armor, then he got whistling birds, and he got his jetpack, right? It's just a continuation. My guess is we'll continue to see this happen in some way or fashion or form. I think before season 2 even started, we were talking about, if you go back and listen to and I'm not going to toot our horn here on what we got right, but this is one of the things that I thought was kind of key. We were speculating because, we had heard, what's his name, Giancarlo, talk about how they were going to have a fight, Mando and Moff Gideon. And my question was, okay, well, if he's going to fight him outside of just blocking it with his Beskar, which they hadn't really, we got the answer here, whether or not this canon Beskar is able to deflect, lightsabers. That's now official here, right? But I did have a question. I said somewhere he's going to have to pick up a weapon of some sort, some way to defend himself. I was speculating that it was going to be something, we went into a lot of detail about what possibly it could be based on a lot of Legends lore, but never once had I considered that they would have a Beskar spear, which is a really cool item. I don't recall if Mandalorians ever use that. I don't remember them ever using it in the EU. So that tells me that something, if they're not going to canonize this as being just a weapon that they had in the past, then there's probably a darker story here where, again, the Empire has taken Beskar away from Mandalorians, has boiled this thing down and made weapons out of it. I mean, this is just kind of in the face of the Mandalorian, and it just keeps coming back to that. So
I thought it was impressive that it could block a lightsaber.
Yeah, that's going to be And when they showed that spear, I mean, it was just like, okay, there it is. That's exactly what he's going to use to fight Moff Gideon here at the end. So I could be wrong. That
was what I thought too. I was like, he's going to need that against the Darksaber.
Yep, absolutely.
For close contact.
So she offers to, and he's going in there. He's not thinking about anything other than just trying to find out where Ahsoka Tano is. She offers him, basically says, hey, you can have the spear so long as you go out and kill Ahsoka. She says she's got a Jedi problem. And so he heads off into the forest. And one of the big, I guess when he gets out into the forest, we didn't even talk about Michael, or what's his name? Is it Michael Biehn? Bean's character. He got a pretty minor role here in all of it, to be honest. I was hoping he'd have a bigger role, especially when he was announced for the series, but I thought he did a pretty good job. I mean, he didn't have a lot to work with. I love the fact that they gave him like a shotgun. That was very reminiscent of like Terminator and all that.
Right.
But yeah, he says his goodbyes to him. Basically tells him, hey, what is that in your bag? He said it's a good luck item. He says, where you're going, you're going to need it, kind of thing. he heads off into the forest, and we get like I think a lot of people are saying is Morai, which is the owl.
The convor.
The convor, yeah. I mean, it looks a little different, I think.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's
I
hard to
saw that
say.
as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, here we go. Here comes, Ahsoka. I thought that was amazing. That might have been my favorite moment, is when he's walking through the forest, like
Right.
that whole like scene, which we're getting to, obviously, what happens there. I thought that was pretty beautiful.
Yeah, the music's great, the atmosphere is great, the lighting is all perfect stuff. I mean, really great stuff from Dave Filoni there, especially when we get to them, get to her holding the child there. And then Ahsoka just comes out. I mean, she comes out guns blazing, really. No, not necessarily, not literally guns blazing, but she comes out and starts attacking Mando. And the sound, man, that sound of Beskar and lightsabers hitting and clashing is just really cool. I mean, it's like a feast for your ears as it was going on. And there's already been a lot of debates as to who would have won. Would the Mando have won? Would Ahsoka Tano would have won? But so we're going to go there. Let's go back to 7th grade. Tell me, Andrew, who would have won in that battle had that played out further?
I mean, Ahsoka Tano wins, but she doesn't kill him. You know what I mean? Yeah. She doesn't kill him, but he's pretty incapacitated. But I'm glad that didn't happen.
And if you guys want to fight it out there, we've got a lot
riding on the Mando. Right. We all have a lot riding on Din Djarin right now.
Yeah. If you guys want to fight it out in the chat, feel free to chime in with who you think would have won if that fight had continued for, let's just say, call it 60 seconds. Who would have won there? But I
mean, right now it's Ahsoka's winning, and I don't anticipate it changing.
Yeah. I mean, there was a moment there where she got the fiber cord wrapped around him, and I was fully expecting a Luke Skywalker kind of move where she cuts it, and no, she actually did something a little bit different. I think more of Ahsoka Tano jump. We got to see her athleticism, which was prevalent.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's Ahsoka in a nutshell. I loved her. Her kinesthetics were very good.
Yeah, everybody's saying Ahsoka Tano wins hands down. So. No love for the Mandalorian just yet, but I don't. Mace Windu, look at that. There's one. Yeah, this is a great fight. But she pops out of that character pretty quick. I mean, she pops out of the when he stomps, he yells at her. He says Ahsoka Tano, right? That kind of gets her attention. The minute he name drops Bo-Katan, then she's kind of right back to what I felt like was really a great moment when she said, "I'm more curious. I hope it's about him," right? And she's pointing at Baby Yoda there. That felt to me like the Ahsoka Tano that like the Ashley Eckstein Ahsoka Tano, right? The Ahsoka Tano we've all known and stuff. So there were a lot of moments like that, regardless of her voice and pitch and the way she looked and all that. There were just things about it, and I credit that back to the writing. I mean, it's Dave Filoni, it's his character, right? I mean, he's writing this, and regardless of who you put in there, with some exceptions, you're going to get the same character. So, and I just love that line. It felt like she was back at that point, like that was totally something that she would have said.
Yeah, and I think that the actress herself spent some time with the source material. I mean, to master a character like that requires some research, and she has such a sort of tortured past that it's important, I think, to represent the spirit of her journey to that point. I don't know who even knows what's going on. Ashley has released some stuff on Instagram. I mean, she said, Ahsoka Tano is Ahsoka Tano, right? I think she has a few posts out there for that. I think she's probably pretty cool with it. In the moment, right? Let's face it. Like, Ahsoka's meant a lot to a lot of fans. So
absolutely,
let's not take away that Ahsoka Tano is a character in the Star Wars universe, and people like her character in the Star Wars universe, and we should honor that, I think, a little bit.
No, you're right. And I know I saw there was a Twitter exchange, I think, between Ashley and Rosario Dawson as well, which I thought was kind of cool, kind of saying, good job, team Ahsoka Tano kind of thing. But so going back to the character, though, you got to think that was pretty jarring. If you think about it, she hasn't seen Yoda in a very long time in real life, I should say, right? The last time she actually saw him was on Lothal when they went to the temple, and she saw the Force Ghost, and she didn't really talk to him. He was kind of telling her where to go in that scene, but to see somebody like that had to have been just completely jarring for her character, which I think, and all she says is, I hope it's about him. Right. But you got to imagine she went through a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings and a lot of memories in that very moment, the minute she sees something like that, because as far as we know, there have only been 3 of those species ever at least
And
in canon.
apparently she didn't know Yaddle, so I mean that means she knows Yoda, right?
Yeah, and
That
Yaddle.
whole
I know that question's come up a lot, and the quick answer is Yaddle was they didn't. There's a technical reason behind the scenes as to why Yaddle didn't come back. It was originally written off as she died between episodes 1 and 2, and then with Jedi Fallen Order, they name drop her in that game at one point. I forget the line. He says something like, "But some Jedi have made it and lived on," and someone says, "Who are you talking about?" So and so, and there's like, "No, I'm talking about Yaddle," and that was and that was just recently, as of last year. So up until last year, at least the canon or what was retconned was that she died in there, and now I think there's a good chance she's alive, and we'll come back to that because there's a couple of theories out there in terms of who's going to be the Jedi that heeds the calling here at the very end.
I kind of haven't thought about that. I'm trying not to think too hard about that.
Well, I'm going to make you think about it here in just a few minutes.
Well, I have thoughts. I just these are I don't know. I'm not a huge prognosticator. I've definitely enjoyed how this story is kind of unfolding, and I'm still sort of surprised that like it was Ahsoka from the word go, as opposed to like he's going to spend this whole time putzing around, and then at the end again, it's like I'm glad they didn't do that. For the record. In any event, so we just fought, and now they're talking. Right?
Yeah, we get to that moonlight scene. What'd you think about that? Like there was nothing being exchanged. You've got Mando pacing back and forth. You can talk about the technical aspects of it as you like, but it was it was almost 2 minutes of silence for the most part, which is a long time. But what'd you think?
It was incredible. It was incredible. It was probably one of the top Star Wars scenes I've ever consumed. Right. And again, I'm doing this on a small phone, and I'm looking forward to watching it on our big TV with the sound up and stuff and going back through it. But it was special. I just love the lighting. And someone put up an art piece of just like an illustration of Ahsoka and the baby and like the man. I don't know. It was just a beautiful like portrait, and it's an iconic shot. I mean, you can tell they were making sure they got like the frame. Like it was good. I really dug it.
Yeah, no, I did too. I think they did a great job in all aspects. And again, a lot was being said without actually being said. And the idea, and this is we talked about this as whether or not anybody would the baby speak this year in the season. And I said that if the baby would speak, it was going to be with Ahsoka telepathically using the Force. And that's exactly what happened here, which was awesome because, and it's brought up a lot of questions though. Like, do we think that the child is actually having a conversation with her, or are we going more with what Ahsoka was saying, where it's maybe more images, right? Or, maybe a broken language of some sort, but there was enough there that she was able to understand, and she was, doing her nodding as though she was acknowledging what was being said to her as that was kind of playing out. Again, the whole setup, and I've already seen dioramas that people have made of this, which is incredible.
And that tree, the way like the tree frames the shot too, like I don't know, that cinematography was fantastic.
It was great
stuff. The clouds, but yeah, I mean, they're taught. It seems like, and I'm kind of just looking through the timeline of like where we're at in that episode. Like that is quite a lot of time in the dark there before we go to the sort of test. You know what I mean? And that conversation, I was not ready to like hear that the baby's name. Or like,
what did you think of the baby's name? Grogu is the name.
I think it's an anagram for George Lucas, where you take all those letters out of his name
and put it together.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, that's just my hot take on that.
Yeah.
It's I mean, this is Star Wars. I mean, what do we have to work with? I mean, we're talking about like, there's so many names that seem like throwaways, and then they become, iconic. He'll always be Baby Yoda to me, I guess, but I'll call him Grogu. But the whole like he studied on Coruscant and all this stuff, that was heavy. Like I've been thinking a lot about that. Obviously, I have a lot to think about.
So let's get into that. I mean, I'll say this: so the Grogu name again, I don't have a strong opinion one or the other. I mean, it's not any sillier than Yoda or Yaddle, right?
Right. So, that's what I mean. Like it's just like Pedro says, like it's Star Wars. I'm like, what are we gonna do? Like get really annoyed about? I don't know. Like I'm not gonna lose sleep over Baby Yoda's name now. Right?
It's all good. But Grogu, I thought it was a play on. You talked about Lone Wolf and Cub, and the child's name in there was Daigoro. And so I thought, well, maybe they're paying homage to that, but either way, it's not important. It's a name. But let's talk about the line, and I'm going to read this real quick because there's a lot to break down here. And this is the backstory that Ahsoka Tano reveals to all of us. She says he was raised at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Many masters trained him over the years. At the end of the Clone Wars, when the Empire rose to power, he was hidden. Someone took him from the temple. Then his memory becomes dark. He seems lost, alone. I've only known one other being like this, a wise Jedi Master named Yoda. Okay, so let's break this down. And I think the first question is, who found him initially, right? Who was it that originally found this child? And I think one of the more prevailing theories that at first I kind of brushed it off and I was like, that's silly, is this idea that she's some kind of he's kind of an offspring of some sort of Yaddle or Yoda, or there's
that's where
about,
all of us, the basic, it goes there.
Right.
We go there because
we want to link them because we visually see them. We want to link them together. But do you think
and we don't know any other
there?
species. We don't know of a planet like this. It's not like we're going to Kashyyyk or anything like that. Like it's not. We don't know any of those things.
Yeah. But what's the harm in that? Any harm in that, or is that making things just a little too connected or convenient for us?
It's. Which part? Wait, let me clarify the question. What's too convenient? That it could be an offspring of Yoda and Yaddle? That's too obvious. I don't want. We don't need that. That's kind of like, we don't need to paint into that margin. And let's face it, like Yoda's like the most important Star Wars character, bar none. Like as far as the philosophy of the whole movie and the spiritual center. So I know that George Lucas was very protective of like a second name or a last name or a first name or a planet or any specifics because of Yoda's sort of mystic, role. I mean, he is, I don't know. He is the personification of the Force, right?
Yeah, right.
And I don't know. I'm very hesitant to like go too deep into that. Personally. I hope we can leave some of it vague. I guess the beauty of it is it's still sort of vague. Right?
Yeah. And the backstory on some of it too was that Yoda species was, there's a whole thing with the Wills there and how that was supposed to be originally the Wills. And that's why the Yoda character knows so much. And it was supposed to be told through his eyes. There's all these different variations of scripts that came out where that all came from. But I
don't know who found him, right? Like, I think that's like the unanswered question. And they didn't really like fill that part of the story out. I saw someone talking about like Mace Windu survived and saved him and got him out of there before Anakin got there, or like the kid who runs out like hit him in the temple or something, which means who knows, maybe like somebody else found him, obviously not Obi-Wan or Yoda because they took off to go with Padme.
Well, hold that thought because I want to come back to that because there's something I think there's a lot of, I think we're drawing too many conclusions here around when the child was removed from the temple. But correct. That thought. Let's talk about, I do want to talk about the masters that he trained under, right? At this point, he's 50 years old. There's been a lot of talk ever since we found out that he was born around the same time as Anakin Skywalker. That spins off a whole bunch of theories in my head, at least, of what this could possibly be, which I'm happy to share a little bit later. But the idea that he trained under a number of different masters, you've got to think that Yoda and or Yaddle were definitely two of the masters that would have a vested interest in training somebody that was of their own race, right?
I'd say so. Yeah, I'm sure they consulted.
Yeah.
It's like a thesis committee in grad school. You have a few people on your committee, but you have a chair, right? Sure. So like, I'm sure he had like a main, but who knows? I don't really actually, we have the Tales of the Jedi book and I've looked through it, but there's a lot of other books in the training. I don't actually know how the master apprentice sort of relationships works in the canonical text, right? Other than what we've read and seen.
Outside of master and apprentice, but even then it's just kind of all on the surface type thing. But
that's a cool book. It's weird though. It's like a weird narration. I don't know. I had a hard time with Master and Apprentice. I love all the novels. They're probably my favorite thing about the Disney sort of spinoff is we have so many new books.
No, it's great stuff. Great source material. If nothing else, you can't get into the stories. But yeah. So the other I think Jedi that come to mind. You got to think somebody like Mace Windu would have had a hand. I don't think somebody like Obi-Wan would have had a hand in the training. Maybe even a Qui-Gon Jinn. I think that's an interesting perspective as well. Now that conflicts with my headcanon, so I don't want to go there. But any of the top Jedi, especially if the child is as gifted as we think he is to be, or presumed for him to be, then you're going to think that the best of the best wanted to have a hand in at least training him to kind of feel him out and see just how much potential he possibly did have.
Totally.
So there's a lot of great theories in terms of who did, but let's talk about who took them. And so the conclusion that I think everybody's drawing here is that somehow during Order 66 he was rescued, and that's not what Ahsoka Tano says. She says that someone took him from the temple. She doesn't give us a date. She doesn't say it was right before Order 66 happened. She didn't say what it was it was done when Order 66 was occurring, after Order 66 was done. She just says someone took him from the temple. So if you just take it at that, it could be a lot of Jedi, including somebody like Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't really think that would be the case. But it could be people. I mean, it could even be somebody like Palpatine, right? I mean, I've at least thought about the possibility of it gets really messy really fast, though, because now you got to figure, okay, so now he's got to get out of Palpatine's grip and all that. But it could be somebody good, it could be somebody evil. I think of people like Quinlan Voss, who we know is still alive in canon, at least. He's still alive and around somewhere at this point, and was around during Order 66.
Right.
It could be somebody like a Yoda. It could be somebody like a Yaddle, self-preservation of their race, for no other reason, just that, right? There could be somebody, and Mace Windu. I'm not even ruling him out, right? There's a story to be told where Mace Windu survives and knows and understands the importance of the child. And again, this gets into my headcanon about whether or not it's a Harry Potter thing, which I won't talk about just yet, but. There's somebody like Jocasta Nu has been thrown around as well. We saw her in the comics, and she was running around with a list of all of the potential Force-sensitive children, right? And this is what the Inquisitors were going after. Vader was looking for this list, and so there's an argument to be made that she went and tried to rescue. Maybe she rescued this one and other ones. We don't know, but she's certainly a person, I think, that makes the candidate list in terms of who would have gone back and taken the child from the temple. So I think it's one of two things. I think either they've taken the child from the temple because there is maybe like a prophecy behind it, or they understand the potential of this child being exploited by sinister forces, and it was done for its protection prior to Order 66. Or it could just be that the child was taken right before Order 66 happened, or as Order 66 was occurring, and done for whatever reason. I think we're going to find out. But your thoughts on that? Do you think we're going to get that answer here this season, or do you think that's going to be something that's played out a little bit later?
It might be played out. It might not be relevant. I mean, unless that character comes back in, right? I mean, I think there's something to be said for, and I mean, I'm a fan of Kanan Jarrus and how he survived the Purge, and Quinlan Voss, that the novel with him and is that Dark Disciple, right? There's a lot of interesting backstory around there with him and Asajj Ventress. I guess the thing with how I guess we all go to because we know the movies, we're like, we have to fit, all of us Star Wars fans, we got to fit it into the little spot where we think it lives. So it's like, okay, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, but it might have been like, he went on a trip with someone a couple months before Order 66 goes down, and he's not in the temple, right? I mean, that's an easy way to sort of describe it in a way, just like the folks who are out in the field, like Kanan, who survived. And his comic books are very good for that. I guess I don't really have like a strong theory on that, in the sense that from what Ahsoka says and narrates there, like she says, his memory becomes dark. I think that's the out, right, for the story, where he can either remember things, or we have to figure out what the next dot connecting is, right? When he gets to this next world.
Yeah.
Tython.
Yeah, Tython.
Yeah.
Tython. Mm-hmm.
Tython. That is going to be a huge connective piece. We'll see if that even resolves in the next episode. They might try to do that as like a 2-arc thing. I'm all about them staying in one place sometimes and doing something. You know what I mean? That's why I like
right.
Even though I didn't think it was like the greatest, the water episode, where it's kind of like, I mean, the Razor Crest has got to get fixed up here. At some point he's got to stop running around, and that's where we meet the other Mandos, which was very special, of course, as a moment. Yeah. But I would love to see this be like a 2-arc thing, or a 2-episode arc, perhaps. I just jetting off every week. I mean, serial television requires that, I think. But I also like when we can play in one place and develop that relationship between the child and the Mando. I mean, that's where you see the power of their relationship, when he has him, retrieve the ball, So
Yeah.
that was a moment where, Ahsoka, I think, in her head is saying, I'm not gonna take this kid from this guy right now.
Yeah.
That's not like the natural thing to do for me or for their relationship.
Yeah. The dark place, you talked about that, his memory goes dark. I've seen some folks that have kind of taken that in a literal sense, to mean that, some kind of dark presence was around. I didn't take it that way the first time. I just thought it was, like you said, it was a convenient way to say that, well, we can't explain what happened in the story and we don't have to worry about it now because all we can just say is, well, the baby, doesn't remember, more than it was a dark place, or there were dark forces or the dark side in some way. Before we get into the test, there was one last thing that I do want to touch on, because it was really kind of it was messing with my mind quite a bit. It was, getting to hearing Ahsoka Tano say the words, "It is an energy field created by all living things," right? If you think about it, she is uttering the words that we all know that Yoda said, right? Way back a long time ago.
And Obi-Wan.
Yeah, and Obi-Wan as well.
Those are Obi-Wan's first sort of words on.
Yeah, and it's like this. It's just like this whole thing of like Dooku was Qui-Gon, and then Qui-Gon taught Obi-Wan, and and Yoda was, and I skipped over Yoda, but right, and then Kenobi, and then Anakin, and now you've got Ahsoka, and I just love the fact that she's just spewing this knowledge, or sharing this knowledge, I should say, with the Mando, and it's just been something that's been passed down from her for so many generations over the years, which I thought was a really crazy thing and a cool thing to hear. Just hear her say those words in there. He says that he was tasked to bringing to a Jedi. She doesn't push back about that, as far as like, I'm no Jedi, right? And we heard that clearly in Twilight of the Apprentice during Star Wars Rebels. And there's a few references like that where she didn't, they keep talking about a Jedi. Do you think that was done intentionally just because they didn't want to have to explain all of that to the audience, the general audience, especially with as many new people as we got? Or do you think that she's okay with that people are just labeling her as a Jedi because they see two lightsabers and they think Jedi, and she's not going to sit there and have that argument?
She's a Jedi, right? Like, to the general audience, to us who know her story. And it's like, I've read some great pieces about like Ahsoka the White, or how you can't have like a gray Jedi. And I'm like, well, I think what we're seeing is that, I mean, she was pretty much in armed combat from the very beginning of the episode, and was very offensive. You know what I mean? Like, and there's a reason she's trying to like get to the magistrate. She has a mission. She's trying to do her thing. So she's on the casualties are part and parcel of the fight, I suppose. Right. And I think a Jedi will accept that. But I think it also, like, I think you're right on the whole general audience thing. Like, it gets like just too much to explain in 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, we had like that whole scene from the dark to the light, from the night to the morning, with the exposition of like, he was on Coruscant. I was like, oh my God, we're talking about Yoda at Coruscant right now. This is insane. You know what I mean? Like, this is deep Star Wars stuff here. And then, we do the test, which is like this magical moment, like that harkens back, of course, to, Luke trying to lift rocks, or Rey trying to balance rocks, or you know what I mean? Like those training moments, not just because the music is fantastic, and usually the whole like evocative nature of just that tension, right, of a character trying to interact with the Force. I mean, this is something, obviously it's not a real thing. It feels real, but to imagine yourself being able to manipulate things like that with your mind, that's where all of us are. We love Star Wars so much, right? So like, I think that we would lose a lot to be like, okay, beat for beat, let's talk about what a Jedi is and what a Jedi isn't. I think we don't need to be overly specific there, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. 100%.
I mean, like, as a fandom, I'm not saying you and I, like, we can.
We'll sweat the details.
We could have a whole nother show on the Jedi stuff. I mean, to me, Star Wars is Jedi. That's why it's great to have a Jedi back in Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, that she's a Jedi, even if she won't accept the mantle.
So you brought up the training. Let's go there next. She mentions that I sense much fear in you, which obviously that strikes a chord with all of us in a lot of different ways. I mean, you think about fear. I mean, anytime I hear fear now, or speak of fear, I think of Luke Skywalker in is it Rise of Skywalker or Last Jedi, when he was talking about fear is what moves a Jedi, or challenges the Jedi, that kind of thing. But this whole idea, I know we tend to hyper focus on Anakin Skywalker and his attachments, right, as well. But you think about it, attachments is a pretty big. There's a lot of examples where attachments have gone horribly wrong with Anakin. You've got Dooku as well. If you've read
Right.
Dooku Jedi Lost, his attachment to his sister
Wow.
played a huge role
Yeah.
in what happened to him.
What a read. That book is weird how it bounces around too. That is a heavy duty read.
Oh yeah, great stuff. Luke is in there as an example of where attachments and fear played in there. Ezra as well. I mean, his attachments to his family and what he was scared about, right? And then later on, his attachment to Kanan and what he was trying to do. I mean, he was at one point thinking about rescuing Kanan and changing and altering reality, simply because he was fearful or didn't want to lose his master. So.
But then we did it with Ahsoka just so we could get her to this point. I think what you were saying, though, I want to return to when you said Luke and fear in Last Jedi, and I think that's one of the very misunderstood texts, Star Wars as a text, so to speak, like that line where he says it, and I think it was heavily in the trailers too, where he like turns around there in that cave and he looks back and he goes, "What are you afraid of?"
Mm-hmm.
And then he also does like the "Who are you?" And those two questions sort of like play off Rey's sort of insecurities, and I don't think we see that with Grogu and Tano quite as much. But again, it was a short it's a 30-minute TV show, right? So they move pretty quick because we gotta still keep the plot moving, right? So
yeah,
I don't.
Well, let's talk about this then. So he mentions that, or she says that he's hidden his abilities, which it seems to be a common thing now. Like it was originally just Yoda who was doing it on Dagobah, right? At least in the old legend stuff, I think the planet itself had a place in hiding his abilities from other people as well. But
all the bioactivity and all that.
Exactly.
It's a very
needle in a
life-filled
haystack kind of thing.
Totally, yeah.
So that was one of them. But I mean, you have Yoda, you've got Obi-Wan on Tatooine, you've got Luke on Ahch-To. So there's been plenty of examples in the past where they've done this. But the idea that there's someone as young as he is and able to consciously acknowledge that he needs to hide his powers, I thought speaks a lot about his maturity. Like he may not be able to hold complete thoughts and sentences because of his youth, but he seems to be much more wise than I think we're giving him credit for.
I think so too. I think we're all underestimating Baby Yoda because we've needed this child to bring it all together in the last couple of years, and we've put a lot into him. But I think you made a note too about the Ahsoka novel, and like she hid herself too. I mean, and for folks that haven't read that, I mean, I had to go read that during when they were doing that final season of the Clone Wars, because that book opens, no spoilers, but like that book opens with the Maul battle, and it's like a little different POV, but of course E.K. Johnson's book came so much before the shows, and they're allowed to change the story for the live action cartoon because they have a different master to serve there, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, Ahsoka had to do that, and if you read her book, you see her journey, and I was obviously watching the episode from that perspective of like what she did right after when she took off, after she took off from Mandalore or even from, I don't know the name of that planet where they crashed, but when she took off from there, that's where her real kind of like story begins, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with what we see today, like it's a different,
or in the rebel stuff too, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like all those things that happen in between the liminal periods of her journey.
We got another a proud dad moment there where he's like, I put in the notes, that's my boy, because it's the first time I think we've seen Mando that excited about anything, really.
I know
he's a pretty stoic character, right? But I mean, that is true fatherhood right there. When your child, or parenthood really, is not just fatherhood, but parenthood in general, when your child does something that's you excited about. I mean, you can't help. It's just like this visceral reaction of the emotion that came out. So
it was beautiful.
The good stuff.
Like it was beautiful. The whole scene was terrific, I think.
And then Ahsoka kind of drops another bomb on us, right? She says, he's formed a strong attachment to you. I cannot train him. His attachment to you makes him vulnerable to his fears, his anger. I've seen what such feelings can do to a fully trained Jedi Knight. To the best of us, I will not start this child down this path. Better to let his abilities fade. Like, this was a big slap in the face to Mando. I mean, he's on this mission. He finally found the sorcerer and found a Jedi, and she's sitting there telling him, no, I can't train him. And there's shades of I can't train the boy, or he's too young, too old, right? I mean, this is all kind of more parallels of previous storylines for Star Wars as well. But I had always said that she wouldn't take him and that she wouldn't train him, only because what you had touched on earlier. Well, I think this is the show. I said this in the last episode. What we're seeing is the show. I cannot foresee. I'm not saying that it can't happen. I'm not saying it can't be great, but just given where we are, emotionally vested with this character of Baby Yoda or Grogu or whatever you want to call him, and where we are with the Mandalorian, and you think about Lone Wolf and Cub. I think this is the show. This is it, and I think we've got to accept that. Now things may change a little bit here, but I think he's a part of the show. Even though it is just the Mandalorian, it is the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda and Grogu
right, and he's
at
still
this
got
point.
to get to Moff Gideon. I mean, he's not gonna just like, okay, here, babysit this kid. And then I'm gonna let this guy hunt him down. Still, like, I mean, we still have to resolve Gideon and the dark saber, and he's still there. I mean, that episode from before had everyone freaking out about Dark Troopers. So there's a larger play involved, and we still have the big reveal that I'm still shocked by, and we can talk more as we get to the the battle scene. Really,
Yeah,
that the apex of this episode, right? Because this is still all setting. This is all very much just like early setting to get us to the battle, right?
right. Yeah,
Because
and
Ahsoka
so-
has her other thing that she's trying to accomplish here, right?
right. She's got her own
So-
mission, yeah, in all of this.
In any of it.
But so from here we get, he confesses that, hey, he was sent out there to kill her. He's like, hey, but I didn't make any promises, which I thought was a funny way to do that. But they decide they're going to
That
go ahead
was
and team
cool.
up. We got the cool line of, a Jedi and a Mandalorian will never see it coming, or something to that effect. I forget the exact wording, but I thought that was really great. We got a little background there on Magistrate Morgan Elsbeth.
But then someone has this
She
great
was-
meme of like,
What was the meme of? Oh, so sorry.
well, it's just like they'll never expect it. Then it's like there's a picture of when he says like they'll never expect it. Like, I mean, Ahsoka and Sabine and all these other times where Mandos and Jedi have actually hooked up. I thought that was funny. That just you have
Oh,
to
yeah.
like Mando. It just shows that like Mando himself like isn't as part of the Star Wars story as like we all are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. No. Yeah.
I kind of like
get
that.
what
Like he's naive. Like he's naive and he's constantly discovering things. Like I thought that was cool. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's great.
It's just funny.
There's certain elements in this episode, in the series, really, where he's experiencing Star Wars, much to like I think a lot of our viewers are. Right. I mean, they've
Right.
really pulled in a lot of people, and so it's a really unique experience in that we, again, hardcore people or the fans that have been following this for a number of years, we all see it. We know the ins and outs of it, but he's kind of like the everyman that's just tuned into the Mandalorian and tuned into what Star Wars is, right? So
It's like happening to him. Like Star Wars is happening to the
Yeah.
Mando, and all of
real
us are
time.
watching it.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
real time stuff. So let's get to the action here. So
Yeah.
they've come up with a plan. They've devised this plan that they're going to go in and free the prisoners, which is Ahsoka's plan. I mean, she's been trying to get in there. She's got this whole. We don't really know exactly. I mean, they hinted at the very beginning where she says, "Tell me what I need to know," and they kind of just leave it at that. We'll dig into that here in a little bit. 'Cause I know you're.
Yeah, they left that hanging hard, huh?
Oh, they did. I mean, you had to wait. They gave us that in the first like 3 minutes of the episode, and you had to wait to the very end of it to understand where that connection was. But they get in there, and there's this is a whole Akira Kurosawa film again. This is Yojimbo all over again, where she's walking down the path, and they're all standing there at the very end. I mean, the imagery here and the parallels with a lot of these samurai flicks in the Kurosawa films, and even westerns, right? Is spot on. And then the action breaks out, and we've got two simultaneous battles going on. Like on the inside, we've got the samurai versus samurai kind of sword battle going on, and then on the outside, we've got like a cowboy western standoff going on. It's really great that they were able to take both of those and include them in this episode, running in parallel at the same time, which I thought was really great. But give me your thoughts, I guess, just on the battle itself, and you can talk about. Let's focus on the was it Lang and Mando, right? And the HK-87 droids, which by the way, there's they're part of the 7th Fleet, right? So this is that symbol is all part of Grand Admiral Thrawn. So we know there's some really close ties there to Admiral Thrawn. But how did you feel about the HK-87 droids and just kind of that the action that was going on with Mandalorian and Lang on the outside?
Yeah, Star Wars is best when it's doing these multiple POVs, right? I
Mhm.
mean, that's like, very much like the beauty of like Return of the Jedi in the final scene is we see like 3 or 4 stories really, right,
Right.
at once, and they're all spiraling together to the conclusion, which I really like. The Mando side was cool. I mean, he's just cutting people down, of course, right? And that's his job, and he's good at that. And the standoff was cool. I thought that was neat, but I was very interested. And the droids are a neat callback to original concept art, and also just again, you talk about the Seven Fleet. These are deep Easter eggs for the geeks in the room, right? And so that was great. But I was really impressed with how the Beskar Pike blocks the lightsaber, and that's interesting. And then at the end there, I was just not ready to hear both Baby Yoda's name and then Thrawn's name in this. I guess I guess Ahsoka being in the episode makes it seems obvious,
right?
That Thrawn would be involved, but yet no. Like, I mean, I guess we know her and Sabine go out, and they're looking for Ezra out there in wild space or the unknown regions or whatever at the end of Rebels, but that just seems like a loop that we're trying to close off. That's a big one, right? And then here she's like, "Tell me where." I was just not ready for that.
Yeah,
it
is.
I was like, oh my god, another. Like, it's just kind of like every few episodes, it's like we're getting these big old drops, and I think we can finish on that, like all these tie-ins and the pro and con of that, right? But both those battles, I love how you're talking about. There's the cowboy shootout and the samurai sword fight on the inside of the garden, like the sort of like elegant and the sort of more like rough, fighting styles. Like that was a nice parallel and duality. And I thought, again, seeing the Loth Cat in the and the Convor, this is like classic Dave Filoni stuff. So I have to say that the way all this stuff rose to this summit, this peak of the episode was pretty fantastic.
Yeah,
no doubt
absolutely.
about it.
Yeah, we got a lot of the sounding again. The sound was great. The Beskar and the spear hitting each other. There was even just before they started, right? Them just kind of walking and pacing back and forth and staring each other down. I mean, you can say, yeah, it's kind of samurai-ish, right? But it's like shades of Anakin and Obi-Wan back on Mustafar right before they went into their battle, right? They were kind of pacing back and forth.
Or Ahsoka and Maul on Mandalore. Like, I mean,
absolutely,
there's just, it was good choreography for sure. Like,
good stuff.
It's again, I like the multiple POV stuff. That I thought that was pretty impressive.
And I actually like that Morgan gave her a good run. Now, granted, I think Ahsoka was pulling punches, right? Because she needed the information, and if she kills Morgan, then she's not going to have it. So it makes sense that she wouldn't have just taken her out. But I don't think she was expecting to be disarmed, at least with one of her lightsabers. So that speaks to either the abilities that Morgan has, or the fact that Ahsoka was giving her 70% or 80%.
Yeah, and maybe she loses. I mean, she loses the lightsaber. It's like, oh damn, she's rusty, or that's part of the plan. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or it was okay, now we got to fight. You know what I mean? Like, I thought there was a lot you could read into that, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So the line though of now tell me where is your master? Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn? So in my mind, this is I don't really see, like, and I'm going to cut to one of the questions I have because we're getting close to the end here. The question I had of whether or not we would see Ahsoka Tano in this season, I don't believe we will. Again, this is just my personal opinion, pure conjecture on my part, but I don't think we are going to. I do think that this was a way to set up whatever the Dave Filoni, Ahsoka Tano, and Sabine series is, whatever that is, whether it's live action, animation. I really feel like this was an Easter egg to kind of springboard this along. They've talked about, doing the stuff on Disney Plus. A lot of these TV shows were going to be even interwoven, much like the Marvel U. I hate to use that as an example, right? But just on a micro level kind of thing, right? They're doing the same kind of thing. And I think this is really a way to kind of hint and tease that out. Now you've exposed a number of people to who Ahsoka Tano is. You've thrown the name Grand Admiral Thrawn out there. It becomes much easier and palatable to bring in a new series like that and bring in new viewers now that they've had a chance to see what she's about, right? So I think that's really what they were doing here in setting the stage for that we know is going to happen. If you look at the timeline as well, it lands about 6 years right after because of Jason Syndulla. His age, if you look at he's about that same age. So it feels like this is really the beginning of what we saw. Like the next step is that final scene in Rebels where she flies into Lothal and Sabine is sitting up there as Ezra was at the very beginning of that whole series, and them jumping into the ship and taking off and going to look for Thrawn at this point.
God, the end of that show was
it's pretty. Yeah, emotions were running high for me on that one. But
bawling.
So that question though of like the question of where if she's looking for Grand Admiral Thrawn, he's obvious. I'm assuming here at this point that he's around. Like she has to. He's got to be. He's got to have some contact with her. Otherwise, why would she be so adamant about chasing her down for knowledge? Right. So that tells you Thrawn's around at some point, or he's there's a presence. His presence is around it here,
Right.
which I think is really intriguing and exciting to hear.
Oh, he's an amazing character, and I love those expanded universe books from back in the day, which are now legends. And I've read most of the new ones. I think I have a couple downloaded. I have yet to get to, a lot of reading to do in general, but yeah, I think and I mean, this is kind of like towards the end, and we just have the final scene. I mean, we have the next quest, of course, to discuss real quick, and there's a lot of speculation around that. But I mean, I don't need another Ahsoka show personally. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like in the sense of like spin-off or like a Rebels 2. I mean, Rebels as a show is so perfect. I mean, I guess we need to know where Ezra and Thrawn are. I mean, now we're all talking about it. You know, I was kind of like, they flew off. You know, my son is still very distraught about the loss of Ezra, and I don't know, like it'll be cool to get some resolution to that. It's kind of the thing I didn't really need to know, because I guess some of that ambiguity is what I kind of love, but it also keeps the story going, right? We got Sabine somewhere. Where's Sabine? Right? Why isn't Sabine with Bo-Katan? You know, like, so I want to see more from those characters too, because I love them. I think they're fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. All right, so we get to the very end of this episode. He doesn't take the spear at first, which I remember like saying, "Really, Mando? Why would you not take it?" I mean, it's Beskar, and you know, it's he's very noble and says that, well, he didn't earn it, so you know, whatever. But he eventually does take it. We know that's going to be what he ends up using to fight Gideon with the dark saber, which I think was really great. He leaves then to go. Mando leaves to go get the child, because he thinks at this point, okay, everything's done here. I just need to bring the child back. And we have
Can I finish this quest? That's poor guy.
Yeah, he's probably thinking, yeah, this has been like a long quest here. Finally got to the very end, but we have a really great moment. Like, it's a very tender moment, which I don't think we get a lot of in Star Wars, to be honest. There are very few times that I can think of. Clone Wars maybe more than anything else, but in Rebels, but in the movies at least, we don't really get these moments. But that moment where he goes in, I mean, you think about it, he's got a strong bond. I mean, the affection's there. He's treated him like a child. I mean, that had to be hard for him to go in there and, you know, wake the child up, get him dressed, explain what's going on. I kind of, in my own headcanon, think that at some point the child told Ahsoka that I don't really want to go. I feel safe here, right? I don't want to be anywhere else. This is my dad, or this is how I haven't felt like this in a very long time. But you got to think something happened there, right? That whole conversation, and we don't really know how much time lapsed while he was there with the child, but you get the sense that they did at least spend some moments together saying their goodbyes, which I think speaks a lot to Mando's character. But thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and that was like a tough moment of like saying goodbye to, like, you know, the foster kid or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, there was like that I don't know, like that was tough, and I was like getting tugged, the heartstrings were tugging there, and then of course Ahsoka does her thing. So, you know, it resolved obviously to keep the story moving.
What did you think about that though? That last line where she says, "You're like a father to him. I cannot train him."
Oh, that whole section. Yeah, I mean, that is cool, because I don't know enough about Tython. Of course, I did some quick reading, but I mean, this opens up the, like, who's going to meet with them, right? Like, who's next? Who's the next Jedi? And we're all obviously waiting on pins and needles. Like, everyone's like, can it be Friday already? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
What do I think about it? I mean, I think the reality is that she knows she's not going to train him, right? And I mean, I think that's Ahsoka is this really, like, kind of middle way kind of character in the whole saga now. She's not righteous like that, I guess, right? Whereas like other Jedi be like, oh, I'm going to train this kid, he's going to be a great Jedi, you know. And she's like, I don't know. Also, you know, clearly you two have a thing here, and she got more out of him than she told all of us and told the Mando. You know what I mean? Like, she's keeping some cards because she's playing this big game of chess. I mean, she's fulcrum, right? Like, she's had a lot to play in all this stuff. So, I mean, for her to just, it also, again, like you said, like, are we going to see her again in the season? Maybe not. You know, I mean, I think we'd all like to, just because we like seeing Ahsoka, and that means maybe more Jedis and more lightsaber fights are happening. But we don't need her to do that in this season, perhaps. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I see Jax. I've seen a few great comments, and I don't remember who was saying that they were loving my comment on the novels at Jeremiah. Thanks, Jeremiah. But yeah, Jackson's talking about like Luke, Ezra, Kel, Kai. I mean, Luke, I don't know. Just who's gonna be? It can't be, Mark Hamill. So it just can't be Luke Skywalker. It just cannot.
Well,
I will not accept that. That's just too obvious. I love Mark Hamill. He's amazing. Don't get me wrong, but it just can't be him. Now, if it were Ezra and Ezra's no longer with Thrawn, that's where we're got to stitch this whole thing back together too, right? Because she's looking for Thrawn because she's looking for Ezra, and she knows who's going to come find him maybe, but doesn't, I don't know. This is going to be interesting for sure to see who shows up at Tython. I don't know.
Yeah, Sebastian.
I honestly can't. I couldn't sleep the other night just thinking about this because it's like
So my thoughts on this. So I think when we got this whole line of, so for those of you he's got to take it to Tython. There's a temple there. There's a seeing stone. He's got to put the child down there, and then someone Jedi is going to hear the calling. Right. They've kind of framed this. That's how they framed it. And I really think what they're doing is they're telegraphing that this will be the final scene. I think this is how season 2 will end with the big reveal of somebody walking up or hearing the call. Maybe. I'm not 100% sure on whether or not that's going to happen, and I'll speculate on who I think it is. But the idea of them going to Tython, I've done entire, Tython is like home to me. I can talk about it all day long. I was doing this thing on SWOTOR where I was playing the game and talking about the planets, and while I was playing, giving you lore and all this stuff. And there's actually some videos out there on Twitch where I went into all the history of Tython, and I'm so excited about it. The idea that we're going to go back there. And for those of you that don't know, Tython was kind of like the before Octu and some of the more recent canonized planets were around. This was the original place where the Force started and where Jedi started and all that. I guess this is the home world, the Mecca of where everything began. So that in itself is exciting for me personally, right? But going to the speculation as to who's going to show up, it could be somebody like Luke. Luke has always been a problem for me in this series because once you introduce him, it's like you've got to deal with him now, and he is a force to be dealt with. And I'm not saying there's not a writer out there that can't figure out a way to navigate that, but it feels like you're bound at some point now, right? You're bound to what was happening during this time frame, and all. Even though that hasn't been mapped out per se, I think it gets a little messy real quick, and I don't think that's where they're going to go personally. Somebody like Ezra is probably more intriguing to me, again, on a personal level, because he is like one of my favorite characters all time now.
Oh, yeah.
But again, I want the Ezra to reveal to be in the new series, right? I want them to save that. I want them to be I want season 1 to end on Ezra's face, right, of that new series, and not here, because now once it's here, we're not going to get the big payoff that I think we will, because I don't think he's going to be a part of this series. I don't foresee that. Right. There have been a lot of other people out there. I think Yaddle, again, is a possibility, and I say that only because of the Fallen Jedi game, that she's definitely around. Again, more of these folks that have been around that we know around. Jocasta Nu is technically dead, or I guess assumed that she's dead, so I don't think it'd be somebody like her. Although they never show her die, though. I want to be clear on that. They allude to that she's dead.
Yeah, I don't, and one of the books kind of deals with her, but yeah, I don't know. We're gonna see. This is what is gonna honestly pull us all through the next week of our lives. And
it's gonna be it's gonna be 3 weeks of our lives, because I don't think they're gonna wrap this up next episode. I think is gonna be Moff Gideon introduction.
Yeah, something's got to knock this thing off the path. It's too straight line, right? It's been very much a straight line, and I mean they got away with one, on Navarro, and got away. And he got away with the Quarren too. You know what I mean? And he's being tracked, right? Like, let's not forget that there's a tracking device allegedly on this thing. So Moff Gideon knows where he is, right? So a lot of things are kind of coming together in a weird way that are, I think is interesting. The one thing that I've really enjoyed about this as we sort of get ourselves towards the end here, but like how you're so immersed in each episode, and then something happens that kind of drags you out of it to think about all of the show, right? Like at the end of that last one with Gideon, or even bringing back the scientists on, on Navarro, like we all kind of forgot about that experiment on Baby Yoda. It seems like a long time ago now. You know what I mean? It's been a year or whatever since this show started. But I'm curious to see like where they knock this thing off maybe a little bit to extend that, like you said, like, because we have 3 episodes left, and can they just get to Tython and then you meet the Jedi? Like, I mean, that's just almost 2 Star Wars ish and not enough Mando. Like it still has to feel like the Mando. Something's got to go wrong.
Yeah,
right? This
right.
poor guy, nothing can go right all the time for him. So that's, I think, is where we're heading next, is for another sort of twist. But
yeah. I think the only other two, just to kind of finish up the thought on who would show up, I do want to say that my gut tells me it's going to be like a Yoda, and it's going to be a Force Ghost Yoda, if it's anybody. And I think there's a lot of great possibilities that come from that. What would even be more intriguing is somebody that's not on the good side, right? Maybe it's a Sith that hears the call, or somebody that's a neutral, or we get into like the whole Dark Jedi thing, or an original member of Jedi that lived on Tython. That would be that's a kind of a far cry, honestly, because now we're getting into really deep Legends type stuff, and I don't think they're going to go there. Although they've been there's been a lot of Legends stuff in this season, man, in season 1 and season 2, and in way more than I ever thought there would be. And so I can't. And even in Rise of Skywalker, there were some name drops in there as well. We got Dooku coming out, or the not Dooku, but there were some name drops in Dooku. We've got the High Republic coming out. There's already been some stuff in there that I've seen that's Legend stuff. So they're not afraid to dip their toes into some of this stuff. So it is a possibility. The idea that somebody could show up like a Dark Menace of some sort that may not be obvious at first, right? It could be a totally different character we've not seen, and we get some parallels to like Master, what's his name? Sabaoth, or I forget how you pronounce his name, from like the heir to the Jedi kind of thing, right? It could be something like that, completely just throwing us off as well. But I'm excited. I can't wait to see who that is going to be, and I do feel like I strongly feel that that's going to be how that it ends there for season 2. So, all right, that's we didn't get into the music at this point. Kevin Kiner's soundtrack,
phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean he's using Kevin Kiner a lot of it here. You're getting the tones of Ahsoka's theme as well. I mean, just this whole last part of it is just amazing. So. It was great stuff. Overall, again, I really liked this episode. I thought it was amazing, beginning to end. I had some minor problems with the pacing of it, and I chalk that up, honestly, to Dave Filoni's direction. I hate to say that, but it's true. Not that it was a bad episode, and not that I didn't feel like he didn't do a better job than he did in season 1, which I didn't think he did a very good job at all, honestly, in season 1, but I felt like this one was a better attempt, and I think he's getting better. I mean, he's shown us that over time and time again, that as he continues to do these types of things, he gets better at storytelling, better at directing, better at editing, frame shots, all that stuff. I think we're going to still see some of that. So, how do you feel? I guess last question here. I mentioned where we've already kind of talked about where Mando goes, but Ahsoka, do you feel like we're going to see her this season? Do you think this was a send off to her new series, or do you think she'll creep up again later on in another season or something?
I think she's got to come back, but that's just because I think. It's weird. Like, it's weird. Baby Yoda's like I said, was one of the best kept secrets in Star Wars history, right? And then this one, they're like, oh, Ahsoka's going to be in it. It's kind of like spoiled it. So it would feel sort of like not using the character to the best of their ability, but maybe she played her role, right? There's it was a send-off there for sure. But we'll see. I kind of agree with Jackson. It was kind of like she's like, go off and do your thing. And like I said, I don't need another Ahsoka show. I'll take it. Don't get me wrong. Preferably animated. You know what I mean? And Ashley Eckstein's voice, just because of that relationship there and how that character has grown. But where does Mando go? I mean, he's trying to get to Tython, but he's being tracked. So something's got to happen. You know what I mean? There's just no question about that. That's where we're up for something going wrong.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, before we go, I've got one quick review that we just got. And this is a 5-star review from Mark Dean 7 out of Denmark. I love the fact that we have we got a lot of listeners and supporters, which is awesome, but we've got so many out in Europe, which I think is awesome. But he says, I've been listening to you for a few years and I can't get enough of you guys. Love your deep dives. Every day takes on Mandalorian. It's great. Keep up the good work. So thank you, Mr. Mark Dean 7, for that 5-star review on iTunes. So definitely
that's cool. That. Good for you with the 5-star review. Fantastic.
Hey, it doesn't always happen, buddy. Sometimes we get the Joker 1 stars and all that, but don't get me started on that.
Not everybody's cup of tea, right?
No, absolutely not.
I'm not, for sure.
Hey, before we get out of here, Andrew, where can people find you and all that? So in case they want to follow your
Indeed.
adventures
Yeah.
there.
So my handle's right there. It's at Andrew Matranga on Twitter, and the hashtag is studying Star Wars. So it's hashtag studying Star Wars, and it's a lot of the news of the day. So I try to keep the spoilers out of it for the show for the first couple days, but by like a day like Sunday, come on. Otherwise, I do, like I said, I'm a brand journalist for StickerGiant.com. I run our podcast. It's called Stickers on the Mic, and we talk about business, growth, and marketing with our customers. So we do a lot of fun conversations around entrepreneurial pursuits, how people started their businesses, what they're doing, and where they came up with their ideas, and how, of course, they use stickers and labels. So that's Stickers on the Mic. That's on Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play, all that stuff, right? You know how podcasts work, friends. You're listening to one right now. But yeah, I'm most active on Twitter, and that's where the Star Wars geekery is happening. And I'm super psyched at engaging with people on this stuff and talking about it. There's a great DM thread that started right after the first episode of the Mando this season that I don't know if you're on there, Albert, or not, but like there's a lot of folks that are, there's 40 something people that are talking, DM on Twitter, which I think is pretty fantastic. So I think Twitter is the best place for this kind of conversation. It's so fun to meet people and talk and geek out about Star Wars, but otherwise, that's where you can find me, is at Andrew Matranga on Twitter.
Nice. Well, first off, again, thanks for coming on to the show. Thanks for filling in for Jonesy.
Fun.
Had a great time. It was a good time talking with you on Star Wars. And say hi to Richard if you don't see him before I do, because we've got a mutual friend. I think that's kind of how we got connected. So
that's right.
Small
I will
world,
say hi
man.
to Richard unless he's watching.
Unless he's watching and listening.
I didn't see his chats. He would have said something. But yes, no, thank you very much, Jeremiah. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody on the chat. That was a very engaging thread tonight. That's fun. You all are having a fun time on the show. So I look forward to the rest of your season. And I also can't wait to do a little debrief at the end here. We got a big week ahead of us. So.
Yep, absolutely true.
3 more weeks, I guess, the 2 weeks in between. But yeah, thank you, everybody. And, have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves, friends. Be safe out there. And, this is my only message other than, of course, may the force be with you. But just stay home and watch Star Wars.
Stay home and watch Star Wars.
This is what I need you to
Wise
do.
words to live by.
That's what I need from all of you, is to stay home and watch Star Wars.
Absolutely.
So I don't think anyone will have a problem with that.
Yeah. We'll be back next week with Chapter 14. Wow, I can't believe it. We've only got 3 episodes left. So Chapter 14, Jonesy will be back as well. So we're looking forward to that episode. So also be sure to thank you to everybody that came out tonight and joined us on the live show. It was outstanding, fantastic interaction. Sorry I couldn't get to everybody on there. Please like and subscribe to the show. You can find us at the Cantina Cast on every form of social media. And don't forget to join our Discord channel where we have more of these conversations all the time, all day long. Jonesy and I are both there, as well as Mike and everyone else from the Earglue Media Network. So until then, we'll see you guys next week.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.